Good evening, everyone. I think we are into the evening. I've decided 5:30 means that it's evening time. It's nice to see everyone. My name's Sam Faulkner. I'm the interim head of Moray House School of Education and Sport. And it's fantastic to welcome you all here to be with us tonight, and those of you that are with us online as well, as we kick off the first of our series of 3 lectures celebrating the 175th anniversary of Moray House School of Education and Sport. So that's 175 years since we first opened our doors and invited our new teachers into the school. And we've been educating students ever since then, all across the globe, welcoming our first cohort of international students from Nigeria back in the 50s. But it was not until the 80s that we solidified our place in the world of physical education and sport by merging with Dunfermline College of PE in 1987. I know Ailsa will tell us a little bit more of the history of that in a little while. But from then, we have embarked upon a future of excellence in teaching and research in both education and sport. So I'm delighted tonight to be able to introduce a topic from our broad portfolio of expertise in the school. And that topic is one that affects all of us at every stage of our lives, and that's physical activity and how it impacts on our health and well-being. I'm especially pleased to introduce this lecture because it is from the Physical Activity for Health Research Centre, or PAHRC as we like to refer to it. It is very close to my heart, this research centre, because I was fortunate enough to be one of the founding members of PAHRC. And it's been amazing to be able to see how the research centre has grown and evolved over its years, just over, well, I don't know how many years now, 10, 13 years. I'm sure Ailsa will tell us in a minute. And it's been wonderful to be part of that journey. Just check. Our mission has always been to champion the benefits of physical activity. And today, PAHRC is at the forefront of research that addresses one of our biggest health challenges, physical inactivity. We all know that there are health risks of being inactive. It's no secret that moving more and sitting less is a good thing for us. And it's good for both our physical and our mental health. However, inactivity is as prevalent as ever, so it's critical that we figure out how we can turn things around. But while we know that being active is good for us, we know much less about how to actually change our behaviours and get people moving more, especially in a world that often encourages us to sit still. That's where PAHRC comes in. The main focus is develop, test and implement strategies to help people of all ages to sit less and to move more. The centre's research is all about finding ways to help everyone, from adolescent girls to older adults, to lead healthier, more active lives. So tonight, we are very fortunate to have my very brilliant colleague, Professor Ailsa Niven, to tell us more about this topic. Ailsa is a professor of psychology of physical activity at PAHRC, where she's been doing a huge amount of incredible work on the psychological factors that influence our activity levels and answer questions such as, why do we find it so hard to stay active? And how can we build habits that last a lifetime? Ailsa's research helps us to answer these questions, but also offering practical solutions that can make a real difference to the world. Ailsa's work spans a variety of areas, from helping people to move more when they're working from home to understanding the role of physical activity during the menopause. As co-deputy director for research at Moray House, she's not just advancing academic knowledge, she's making sure that what we learn gets put into practice to help people live healthier lives. So tonight, Ailsa will take us through the essential role of physical activity in supporting our health, both now and as we age. She'll share with us some of the latest research on physical activity levels and explain how the work being done at PAHRC is shaping physical activity policy and practice on a national and international scale. Plus, she'll also offer insights from behavioural science to help us understand our own physical activity habits and develop routines that can have a lasting and positive impact. So, whether you're already physically active and active and physical activity enthusiast, or someone who could use a little bit more motivation. There's something in tonight's talk for everybody. So without further ado, over to you, Professor Ailsa Niven.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Sam Faulkner, for that lovely introduction. And I'm hugely privileged to be the representative of the sport element of Moray House School of Education and Sport. And I hope I do us justice tonight. I just wanted to take a second to welcome everyone, welcome those in the room, and welcome those of you who are with us online. Thank you for joining us. And I just wanted to sort of flag that please feel free to stretch, move, stand during this lecture. If you're at home, then you may have a bit more space to do that. If you're in the room, then please just make sure that you're not disturbing someone behind you, but we have plenty of room, so please feel free. 50 minutes to an hour is a long time to be not moving, so please feel free to do that. And just wanted to flag, I'm really happy to share the slides. So if there's any bit of information you think, oh, I want to know more about that, then please feel free to get in touch with me and I'm happy to share a copy. So what I plan to do in the next sort of 50 minutes is start with an introduction to Moray House and our Institute of Sport, PE and Health Sciences. And although Sam has already introduced our Physical Activity for Health Research Centre, I'll just say a few words about that and where we sit within the broader Moray House community. Then going to focus in on, well, what is physical activity? Consider why it is important and consider, are we doing enough physical activity as a nation and globally? And then consider, well, how can we help ourselves develop a physical activity habit to make a difference to our health? Or think about how we can support others in order to become more physically active. Throughout that, I will illustrate how our PAHRC researchers have made a difference to answering these questions and where my colleagues have contributed to some of this literature. And then we have time for some questions and answer at the end. Just going to check all recording okay? Yep, fantastic. So I know some of you will be very familiar with Moray House School of Education and Sport, and some of you will not know too much about it. But I just wanted to highlight, we are a very diverse community. There's lots going on, and we are organised into 4 institutes. So Institute for Education, Community and Society, ETL, Language Education, and where we're situated with PAHRC is within the Institute for Sport, PE and Health Sciences. And I was reflecting, as this is about the 175th anniversary of Moray House, where does sport, PE and health sciences sit within the history of Moray House in the last 175 years? And as Sam mentioned, Moray House was originally established in 1848 and was originally known as the Free Church of Scotland Normal and Sessional School. So I wondered, how much physical activity did they consider? And I did a little bit of research, and I'm no historian, but I found a useful resource and highlighted in that school, which is training teachers to be teachers, they highlighted that trainees had to be proficient in all of these areas in order to qualify as a teacher to teach in the Church of Scotland schools. So looking at that, I don't think there's very many opportunities to engage physical activity in there. So no sport, PE and health sciences. I'm pretty sure I would not pass those requirements. My penmanship is pretty bad, as my children will attest to. The Free Church of Scotland became Moray House School of Education, Moray House College of Education in 1907. And at that time, PE, again, was not part of the training. PE was seen as an additional element on top of the teaching qualification. And it wasn't until 1987, as Sam mentioned, that Moray House merged with Dunfermline College of PE. which itself had been established in 1905. And I could spend 50 minutes telling you about the history of Dunfermline College, but I won't. And then subsequently merged with the University of Edinburgh in 1998 and moved from the Cramond campus, which is on the north side of Edinburgh, to this current Holyrood campus in 2001. And it wasn't until 2019 that the name changed to include and sport, and representing sport as an inclusive term. So our Institute of Sport, Physical Education and Health Sciences in 2024 is making a difference in a number of different areas, making a difference in terms of education, one of the largest providers of PE, initial teacher education, in the community, and in terms of the research that we do. And it's the research that we do that I will be focusing on. Within our institute, there are a number of different groups of colleagues who are working in a number of different areas of that broad term of sport. Most recently, we have a IOC UK Centre on Injury and Illness Prevention in Sport. And you can see there's a range of, I'm just going to see if my pointer's working. Yeah, a range of different areas of research that is being undertaken within our institute. And sometimes we understand each other, and sometimes we're a little bit less sure in terms of what each other's is doing, because there's such a breadth of activity and such a richness of activity. And we all fall under our sports-related thematic research hub within the school. So the focus that where I'm based is within the Physical Activity and Health Research Centre. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about us and then move on to how we've contributed to research in this area. So we established in 2012, Sam, which seems like yesterday. I wrote this down because it keeps changing. At the moment, and I hope I've got this right, there's 11 academic staff, 8 PhD students. That keeps changing because they keep graduating. A number of postdocs, and this last academic year, we've had 2 visiting scholars. We also have 5 honorary professors and fellows. So there's quite a few of us. And this was a picture taken at our away day last year on the one day of summer in Scotland last year. And here we are, Sagan, who's our administrator, taking us through our paces in terms of a rock fit class, and us doing our best to practice what we preach in terms of being physically active. Our initial director was Professor Nanette Mutry, and 2 years ago, Professor Marie Murphy came in and has become our new director. And this is our mission and vision within physical activity. Our mission is to be an internationally recognized centre of excellence for research, knowledge exchange, engagement, and impact in the field of physical activity for health. And our vision is to support people in Scotland, but beyond as well, to be more active for improved health and well-being. So what is this thing called physical activity? And often when we talk about physical activity, people can think about, well, that's sport, isn't it? And sport is part of physical activity. But just highlighting here that physical activity is more than just sport. We can be physically active in our everyday lives through active travel, heavy housework, gardening. And we may choose to be active in our recreation time, such as recreational cycling, dance. But sport also offers an opportunity to be physically active. And we're physically active when we're using our skeletal muscles in order to increase our energy expenditure and increase our heart rate. And we can also think about physical activity in terms of different types. There's cardiovascular, aerobic physical activity, where we can be working at an intensity from low to very high. Muscle and bone strengthening activity is important, as is balanced physical activity. I'm kind of introducing those now with the view that we'll come back to those different types. So all of these forms of activity are physical activity. But how much physical activity should we be doing in order to make a difference for our health? And in the UK Medical Officers Physical Activity Guidelines is a real benchmark and guidance in terms of understanding how much physical activity we should be doing. And a number of our PAHRC colleagues have been involved in developing those in 2019 and making a contribution and making a difference to the CMO guidelines. I'm just going to talk us through, so the CMO guidelines, there is this big, heavy document that's accessible online. And this edition in 2019, there were a number of infographics that were created as well in order to enhance the way that we communicate about these recommended physical activity levels. And this is a snapshot of part of the infographic for adults and older adults. So for our health, we should be aiming each week to accumulate at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity. And that can include walking, swimming, cycling, or at least 75 minutes of vigorous intensity activity. So that might involve going for a run, playing sport. Or it can be a combination of these two different levels of intensity. And there is also emerging evidence that very vigorous intensity exercise, such as doing a HIIT class, a boot camp type activity, is also beneficial, and it may be that we need to do less than the 75 minutes to get the benefits. In the center of this infographic is a focus around building strength. And in the 2019 guidelines, there was a deliberate effort made to shine a spotlight on strength, because it's often forgotten about, and highlighting the importance of undertaking muscle strengthening activity at least 2 days a week. Other elements of the guidelines highlight the importance of minimizing sedentary time, breaking up long periods of inactivity or sitting in environments such as this for our health, and also for older adults, working on improving balance on 2 days a week in order to reduce the likelihood of frailty and falls, which become increasingly prevalent in an aging population. And although the 150 minutes or 75 minutes is an important message, it's really important to also highlight any activity is better than no activity. And the health gains are particularly, the biggest gains come from going from nothing to something. So really encouraging some physical activity is better than none. We don't have time, but just wanted to flag, and there's links here if people want to follow up on them, that there is guidance in relation to other populations, from birth to 5, young people, disabled adults, pregnancy and childbirth. And that's a screenshot of each of the infographics in relation to those populations. And the most recent one, which was really great to see, was the disabled children and young people. Just in the last couple of years, that guidance has come out. So that's what is being recommended that we should do. And what are the health benefits that we'll gain from engaging in activity at that level? And this quote from the CMO guidelines document, I think is really quite important and quite stark. If physical activity were a drug, we would refer to it as a miracle cure due to the great many illnesses it can prevent and help treat. And Again, just a screenshot highlighting across the lifespan from children, adults, and older adults, the health benefits that we can gain from being physically active. Excuse me. And for children, in terms of fitness and bone health and cognitive function, in adults, all-cause mortality and many benefits in terms of chronic health conditions, and also enhancing quality of life, enhancing our mental health, enhancing our well-being. And in older adults, already mentioned the challenge of falls and frailty, and the importance of physical activity in terms of maintaining physical function in order to reduce the likelihood of that occurring. And this kind of gives a little bit more of detail in relation to the benefits. And I won't go through each of them, but just sort of flagging a couple. Regular physical activity reduces your risk of all-cause mortality by 30%. I'm a psychologist, I'm particularly interested in mental health, reduces your risk of depression by up to 30%. So there's numerous benefits. And if we could put it in a pill and everyone could take the pill, then the pharmaceutical companies would definitely be fighting over it. Continuing on the benefits, I just want to spend a little bit spotlighting on the PAHRC research that has been undertaken to demonstrate the benefits of physical activity for health. I'm drawing from work from my colleagues. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Daily Mile, a little bit about exercise after stroke, and a little bit about the health benefits of walking. So the Daily Mile is something that originated in Scotland, and a head teacher in Stirling originated this idea of encouraging classes to in primary school down their pencils, go outside, move for 15 minutes. And it became the mile, go around the pitch or whatever space that they have, move for 15 minutes. And the children could walk, they could run. Certainly I've seen children skip and hop and do whatever they wanted to do. They had that time for 15 minutes. And it's been a huge success. Currently, over 5 million children worldwide undertake the Daily Mile. And as you can see with this data here, the number of schools who are participating in the Daily Mile in 98 countries. And our colleague, Dr. Josie Booth, has been leading some of the initial research in this area alongside colleagues from the University of Stirling. And the Daily Mile has been such a massive initiative, but there's always that question, but actually, does it work? Is it beneficial? What are the health benefits? What are the benefits for the school children? And when I started talking to Josie about this in order to present some information, she's like, look at all this research. I was like, there's so much that has grown around the Daily Mile. But what I'm going to do here is just focus on a couple of papers that look at primary school. So primary school would be age 11 and under, and the outcomes in relation to their health. The very first paper that came out was a quasi-experimental pilot study. So it's not easy to construct a randomized controlled trial around primary school children. But this study showed that participating in the Daily Mile made the kids more active, and they were less sedentary, and they saw improvements in their fitness and their body composition. So making a difference to their health. And this study then went on to inform the UK government's childhood obesity action plan. And Josie highlighted that the findings from this study also informed our Scottish government's decision to promote Scotland as a Daily Mile nation. So taking this concept of 15 minutes of movement in schools and looking at how we can integrate it into secondary schools, into workplaces, into universities, and aiming for Scotland to become the first Daily Mile nation. A subsequent study that Josie led on was a really interesting study. She was approached by the BBC, so which is our main broadcaster in the UK, to lead on an experiment called Terrific Science. And there were over 5,000 pupils from 332 schools who took part in this. And they looked at, compared the benefits of participating in a Daily Mile with the benefits of participating in a beep test, with the benefits of a control condition. And the findings showed very clearly that there were improvements in cognition and well-being with the self-paced activity. And Josie was delighted when the Daily Mile started to advertise the Daily Mile on TV to highlight it, and her paper was referenced as the source of the evidence to support the benefits of the Daily Mile. And as it says there, just 15 minutes a day of outdoor activity enhanced children's ability to learn, improved their mood, attention, and memory. The research is ongoing. As I mentioned, it's a large amount of research around this area. Josie's currently working on research with secondary schools, and they also have ongoing research looking at how the Daily Mile is impacting on the health of teachers. And as we tend to do as researchers, any opportunity to try and recruit participants, she asked me to highlight here if anyone is a teacher and interested and would like to participate in that study, then please scan that QR code. The second area I'm focusing on is some work that our colleague Dave Saunders has been leading around exercise after stroke. And a stroke can be described as a brain attack. And it happens when the blood supply to part of the brain is cut off, killing brain cells. Damage to the brain affects how our body works. It can affect how we feel and how we think. In the UK, there are approximately 1.3 million people living with stroke, and it's a leading cause of death and disability, not just in the UK, but globally. So the question is, can exercise help? Can exercise make a difference following stroke? So the work that Dave's been doing, he's been undertaking systematic reviews in order to synthesize and summarize the evidence to inform clinical guidance. So what is the evidence that exercise is beneficial post-stroke? And he's been doing this for quite a while. As you can see, in 2004, they started this work. And just in this last year, he's been on sabbatical updating the reviews around this. So the next edition is due in 2025. And this is just a graphic to illustrate how the evidence is changing in terms of the types of activities that are being investigated, and versus cardio strength, cardio and strength, and the increase in volume of studies over the period of time. Dave has been not just doing any systematic review, he's been doing a systematic review to the highest quality. And the Cochrane systematic reviews are recognised as the highest quality of review. And he, on sabbatical, has been doing 3 Cochrane systematic reviews. So we've all been very impressed with them, and he's nearly completed them. So working with some colleagues from here and colleagues from elsewhere, building that evidence base around the benefits of exercise post-stroke. And this evidence is making a difference in terms of informing clinical guidelines for stroke. And I know there's a lot of text there, so just highlighting one element of it. People with stroke should be offered cardiorespiratory training or mixed training once they're medically stable, regardless of age, time since stroke, and severity of impairment. And that recommendation has come from that synthesis of the best quality evidence and from the work that Dave has been leading to make a difference. The third area I'd like to focus on is walking. And some time ago, a few years ago now, but still really relevant, and I think many of us working in this area would agree with this, walking is the nearest activity to perfect exercise. And when I look to see how many of our colleagues have been contributing to the evidence base to support that, it almost became easier to say, well, who hasn't? I think many of us have been looking at the benefits of walking for our health. And so I just put everybody in, because everyone has in one way or another. I'm just going to touch on some of that evidence that we've been working on. In 2018, a colleague, Paul Kelly, led a scoping review looking at the benefits of walking for mental health. And the scoping review is really kind of figuring out, well, what do we know about this? What does the evidence that's out there tell us? And this was published in a special edition within the British Journal of Sports Medicine in 2018. And alongside those papers, there was a number of infographics created in order to illustrate the findings of these studies. And our colleague, Dr. Chloe Williamson, led in the infographics for all of those papers and produced some really great infographics to summarize the findings. And just want to highlight a couple of things. Just as you can see, hopefully you can read that okay in the room. Is that okay? Yeah. And read it okay online. The evidence base has grown. There's strong evidence. The strongest evidence was really that walking can prevent and treat depression. And one of my colleagues, Graham Baker, is actually leading on an updated review to look at the evidence base since then in terms of the benefits of walking for depression. Walking may kind of suggest, it tells us that the evidence wasn't so strong, but there was an indication that walking was associated with positive mental health outcomes such as feeling happy and enhancing our self-esteem. And interestingly, walking outdoors looked like it could bring additional mental health benefits. And another publication that we published last year, where we looked at some Scottish Health Survey data, and we looked at the relationship between different types of physical activity and mental well-being. And mental well-being is all about feeling good and functioning well. And we found, in terms of all the different types of physical activity, walking was the one activity that doing some walking was more beneficial than none. Didn't matter how much walking you did, just any walking was beneficial for your mental well-being in terms of an association. So some walking were related to enhanced mental well-being. Marie and Paul and Tessa were all involved in another publication from that BJSM special edition. And Chloe created another lovely infographic. And the focus of this study was around how important the pace of our walking is important. We have a lot of data around how much walking we're doing, but what intensity are we walking at, and how important is that in terms of making a difference for our health. And as you'll be able to see from the infographic, some key findings there. Walking at an average, brisk or fast pace was associated with a risk reduction for a number of outcomes. The one that I was particularly interested in was this one, where once we get over 50, there were more pronounced dose response effects with faster walking pace. So really, it was they highlighted, okay, well, what does that mean for the population? and highlighted that for those who are finding it difficult to find time to be physically active, when you are walking, if you can walk at a faster pace, then that's beneficial. And the importance of public health messaging, emphasising walking, but also walking at pace. And I know there are some controversies around this, and there's different views in relation to that. But the findings of the study really highlight that any walking is good, but faster is better. So hopefully I've convinced you that physical activity is good for our health and can make a difference to our health. So I want to turn to thinking about, well, how physically active are we? And how lucky are we in PAHRC to have one of the world-leading researchers in this area, Dr. Tessa Strain, who's working with us as a Chancellor's Fellow, published in just a couple months ago a paper that really helps us answer this question. So they looked at, she was working with the World Health Organization, looking at national, regional, global trends in insufficient physical activity. Only 5.7 million participants. No, that's a good response. And really looking at, well, where are we at in terms of physical inactivity levels on a global basis? And the answer is not great. The global physical inactivity rate, so this is the percentage of those who are not sufficiently active in relation to the recommendations, was 31.3% in 2022, and that was an increase, quite a big increase from 2020. And I'm not going to talk you through this, but just illustrating this image of the world showing the different prevalence of inactivity in the different regions around the world, and highlighting particularly the inactivity levels in North America are up to 30 to 39, and in the UK and Scotland, here we are up here, not great either, but slightly lower in terms of prevalence of inactivity. And because we are in Scotland, I just want to focus a little bit on some of the Scottish data. And we're really lucky in Scotland that we have really good quality surveillance level data that comes from the Scottish Health Survey that is administered every year and provides us with the opportunity to look at trends in physical activity. And this graph highlights data for adults. The Scottish Health Survey also provides data for children and young people, but I've not had time to focus on that. And what we have here up here is the percentage meeting the MVPA guidelines by age and by sex. So remember, this is the meeting 150 minutes of moderate physical activity, or 75 minutes of vigorous activity, or a combination of the both. So that was the question that the participants were asked. We have breakdown by age, and we have men in the light blue and women in this purpley color, and all adults in the darker blue. And as we can see, just a couple of points to highlight, there's a trend to a decrease across age. Almost every point, women are less active than men. And it's not too bad in terms of the percentage who are meeting the MVPA guidelines. But the picture gets a little bit more gloomy when we remember that actually being physically active is not just about the MVPA. And considering what about muscle strengthening activity, how much of our population are engaging in this important muscle strengthening activity on at least 2 days a week. And the paper there is, again, some of our colleagues in PAHRC who highlighted, and this fed into the CMO guidelines, that actually quite often we forget the forgotten guideline, we forget about the muscle strengthening and balance element when we're considering physical activity levels. And it's really important to consider that because of the implications for our health. And when we bring that element in, so this now is showing the percentage of the adults who are adhering to both the MVPA and the muscle strengthening recommendations by age and sex. And the numbers have dropped considerably. Even in the younger age group, 42% are meeting that recommendation. And a slight blip here, but a steady decline across the ages. And we're interested at the moment in research around menopause, and with the onset of menopause, there's considerable decrease in estrogen, which has an impact on bone mineral density and muscles. So muscle strengthening activity is really important at that time. And looking at women in that age category, we're seeing only a quarter are engaging in muscle strengthening activity alongside their MVPA. So there's room for improvement in terms of activity levels globally, and also in Scotland. How are we doing for time? Okay. So I want to move on now to think, okay, we know physical activity is good for us. It's beneficial, makes a difference to our health. We know that sort of in a population level, people are not sufficiently physically active. So I want to consider now, okay, well, what actually influences our physical activity behaviour? If we can understand what's impacting the behaviour, we can start to understand how we can help people to become more active. And I always remember clearly my previous colleague, who was previous director of PAHRC, Nanette Mutry, who's now an emerita professor within Moray House. She said, well, it's not rocket science, understanding what influences physical activity behaviour. But when we start to look at the evidence around, well, what does influence physical activity behaviour? This is an adaptation of an approach that's called the ecological approach, recognising that multiple factors influence our behaviour. For all of us, policy decisions will impact our behaviour. In Edinburgh, for example, we've just introduced a low emissions zone, and that will have impacted some people's behaviour in terms of, well, I'm not taking the car anymore, and we'll look for alternatives. In Edinburgh, there's lots of 20-mile-per-hour zones, and some of our colleagues have looked at how that impacts activity behaviour. So these policy level decisions, whether it's at council level, whether at government level, can influence our behaviour. Where we live, where we work, the physical environment in which we are in, how walkable is it? Do we have some pleasant green space that we can be in, or is there lots of traffic around? How that will all influence our physical activity behaviour. But also the environment in which we're in terms of our social environment is influential. Our friends, our family, the social norms associated with where we are. It's great to see a few people getting up and moving, but if I hadn't sort of broken that social norm and gave you permission to do that, I suspect very few people would have done it. The social norms are coming into this sort of environment, or to come in and sit down. If we have friends and family or parents or children who are active, then that will impact our activity behaviour as well. Who we are as an individual, our biology, our physical literacy, our psychology that I'm interested in, what's our attitude towards being active? How confident do we feel about being active? Do we enjoy it? That will all influence our physical activity behaviour. And these factors all interact. So policy decisions will impact our physical environment. Our social environment, whether we can be with somebody, will influence what physical environment we go to. Our psychology will influence who we want to hang out with in terms of whether we want to be with people who are active or not. So it's not looking that straightforward. It's looking a little bit more complicated. And within the area of physical activity, there's been a shift, building on this sort of approach to understanding physical activity, to move towards thinking about how all these systems interact. And Flora Jackson's done some fantastic work within Public Health Scotland, looking at a systems approach to creating a more active Scotland. And Flora, we're delighted, is a PAHRC Honorary Fellow and one of our team. So as you see, this looks pretty complicated. And I'm not sure how well you can see it, but without putting my glasses on, I can't see it very well, but it incorporates lots of different elements in terms of the individual, in terms of biology, in terms of the environment. So just going back to Nanette's quote, she started with "it's not rocket science" and then finished with "it's much more complicated than that." And this was before we were getting to this point of understanding all the different influences on behaviour. It is complicated. There's lots of factors to consider. But if we're thinking about our own behaviour or the behaviour of those who are around us, then I think it's important to think about our own psychology. That's what we can influence. That's what we can have some control over, and consider how we can focus on that in order to help us be more active or help those in our environment be more active. And a key influence on us becoming active or being active is the motivation that we have to be physically active. And I'm going to present a number of sort of top tips, and there's lots of information out there, but this information is grounded in theory and grounded in one of the strongest theories to understanding behaviour, which is highlighted there as a self-determination theory. And one of the key tenets of this theory is that if we want to help people be motivated, then we need to help them be in an environment where they feel competent, where they feel autonomous, so that they have a level of control over what they're doing, and so they feel related to others in that environment. And substantial amount of evidence highlights that that will lead to the best kind of motivation. It'll lead to feelings of enjoyment and ultimately lead to optimal well-being and feelings of vitality. So my top tips, drawing from this theory, are about building those elements of competence, autonomy, and relatedness. So helping individuals build feelings of competence. And strategies to do that in terms of setting goals, deciding what we want to achieve and writing the goal down. This whole idea, and this isn't rocket science, but often we forget about it, is starting small and building it up. Be realistic, but challenge oneself. And keep a record, seeing that progress, whether it's on your phone, whether it's on your watch, whether it's in a particular app, old school and a bit of paper, that will really help sort of document it and see that progress. And when we see what we've achieved and see how we're developing, then that helps to build competence. And celebrate milestones. It's important to acknowledge and recognize when we have achieved. Nanette's got many great quotes, but this one I think is also great. Take your dog for a walk, even if you don't have one. So in terms of starting easy, walking is the nearest activity to perfect exercise. Any walking is better than no walking. And it's often an accessible approach that many people can engage with. And we work closely with an organisation in Scotland called Paths for All. And their aim is to create a happier, healthier Scotland. And one of their key approaches is to create walking groups and opportunities to walk in the community, support walking in the workplace, and if anyone's interested, they've got lots of really great guidance. And this is my dog, who I do take for a walk quite a lot. Second tip, building feelings of autonomy. So this is really about feeling, I'm doing this because I want to do it. I'm not doing it because Ailsa told me to do it or because someone else told me to do it. And central to feeling autonomous is about having opportunity for choice. Choice is really key, as my children tell me regularly. Thinking about, well, what do I enjoy? Yeah, someone is doing rock fit, but someone that might not be for you. Walking might be for you. Walking might be an enjoyable thing. And we know that everyone's different. Some people love it when they feel the burn and really get a lot from that. For some people, that they just hate it. And that feeling, that difficult feeling, when being active. But actually, we know from some of the research that we've done that feeling then leads to enjoyment later on. It's like, yeah, I did enjoy that. That's what I wanted from my activity. So what is it that works for you? And also just reminding yourself why you're doing it. And I went for a run up Arthur's Seat before this lecture. And if you run up Arthur's Seat, it's a bit like that. So you do feel the burn. I was like, why am I doing this? Yeah, I know why I'm doing this. And that can just help build that feeling of autonomy and that you're there because of something that's important to you. Building feelings of connectedness, having a physical activity buddy, thinking about who can support me in this, and communicating with your partner, communicating with your family and getting them on board to support you with it. Finding your tribe, finding your group. And thinking about, well, who can I support here as well? I was at Park Run, which some of you may be familiar with at the weekend, and there were lots of families there. And one of the strongest influences on children's physical activity is the parents and what they're doing, and thinking about how you can model and how you can support them to be active. One of the biggest challenges in psychology is understanding how we can go from the good intentions to those intentions actually leading to a change in behavior. And we've all set good intentions and then actually it's not happened. And in psychology, it's called the intention behavior gap. How can we cross that gap and set these intentions and actually lead to a change in behavior? And one of the strongest ways to do that is to plan, action planning. And thinking, okay, yeah, I do want to try and be more active. Okay, moving from that, I want to try and be more active to what, where, when, and who with. And breaking it down and thinking about it in that way. And keeping this plan consistent. The title talked about habits. And we know that we can build habitual behavior by looking to do something at a regular point. And one of the good ways to think about what that regular point would be is to link it to something that you're already doing. So if, for example, Thursday, if at work you always have a lunchtime break, then make Thursday the walking lunchtime break. And then get your buddies on as well. And that's a good way to build support to make sure that that happens. And that's all I really wanted to say, but I just wanted to take a moment to dedicate this lecture to one of our colleagues in Moray House, Professor John Sproul, who died suddenly this summer. And when we think about, well, who makes a difference in our school? John made an enormous difference to the world of PE. And to his colleagues, he was always one of these colleagues who always had time for people and always checked in with people and really looked out for people. So I just wanted to acknowledge John and really dedicate this lecture to him. Thank you for listening. And I think we've got time for any questions.
Thanks so much, Ailsa, for that. It's brilliant to hear that. What's the big question that's coming next? What, you know, you've talked us through quite a lot of where we've gone with PAHRC and some of the things that are challenging us at the moment. But if there was a sort of where would you put all your money in physical activity research next? Should we be doing? Sorry, I clearly didn't preempt this question with Ailsa beforehand.
No, I think environmental issues are going to become increasingly prevalent, and I think if we can look at ways how promoting physical activity can also have beneficial effects on the environment, and active travel is an obvious one, I think, to look at getting people out of their cars so they're moving and so they're not polluting the environment. I think is probably going to become increasingly important.
Brilliant. Thank you. Any other questions? If not, oh, at the back, yeah.
Disseminated down to schools very quickly. How does all the other research that you can get disseminated down to schools? There's a lot of information there that I don't even know about it, so I wouldn't get it down to school.
Yeah.
But I think that's too.
Yeah.
How does that disseminate down to schools?
Yeah. Great question, and hopefully we're you okay?
Just repeat.
Oh, okay. Question, and correct me if I get this don't get this quite right, is about how the research that we do, how we better disseminate it to end users and such as schools who could benefit from it. Hopefully we're getting better at it, but you maybe tell me otherwise, because increasingly we're thinking more and considering more about the dissemination, the impact and the engagement with our research. And we're being, one, because we want to, and we don't want to write papers and they just sit in a shelf or online. But two, we're being increasingly encouraged and evaluated about, well, what is the impact of that research that you've done? So, for example, the work that Josie's been doing and looking at how Daily Mile has grown massively. It's great if it's grown massively, but what is the evidence that actually works? And the beneficial effects on teachers, for example. And then going, not just doing the research and, okay, we've done the research, but then going back and feeding that back in. So we're trying hard to do it better. And I'm sure it is better than it was sort of 10 years ago. But it's interesting to hear. And I'm just going to throw it out to any of my colleagues who want to add anything in relation to that.
Yeah, and just say, as Ailsa said, I think in the 10 years it has come on a lot, and you saw some infographics there. That is at least our attempt to take what can sometimes be impenetrable information, and information that teachers and policymakers just don't have time to synthesize. So things like infographics, events like this, dare I say, and engagement with, we engage a lot. Ailsa talked about PAHRC, we talk to Scottish Government, we run an event every year, which is for policymakers and practitioners and researchers, so that we step out occasionally of our ivory tower and try to make sure that the research makes sense.
Thank you very much, Ailsa. Fantastic to hear your thoughts and reflections of a journey for PAHRC there. And I think I'm just going to reflect back on what you're saying with regards to how complicated it is. And it is complicated, I don't think there's any question of that. And I think maybe that speaks to the extent to which our research within, actually, I'm not on, am I? Is that good now? The research around the area of physical activity and sensory behaviour has grown exponentially over the last 10 to 15 years. And it's really nice to see PAHRC, the work that PAHRC's been doing reflected in that journey. And I think it also reflects our need sort of globally as a civic contribution to continue to invest in research in this area, to continue to invest in the impact of this research, the communication and the way that we can share it to really make a difference. And I also think it's really nice to see and think a little bit about how we need to also invest in the physical activity specialists of the future and how we get those and make sure that we're continuing to make a difference. And it's nice to think of the fact that we have our MSc in physical activity for health in Moray House School of Education and Sport, and that some of our graduates have gone on to become some of the experts within this area, both within PAHRC and within Moray House, and also globally. So I think that's testament to the work that we're doing within the school and to the work that the PAHRC's doing, and the work that we're doing within this discipline more broadly. So on that note, though, I would just like to say a huge thank you again to Ailsa. Thank you to the team for making sure that this event goes ahead, to Pauline and to Hannah and to Laura, and others that I know behind the scenes here. And thank you all for joining us today and to supporting this event and for helping us celebrate 175th anniversary of Moray House School of Education and Sport. Many thanks.